No, it's
okay. So what we want to achieve today is I'll start by objective number 1. Allow me to. By the time we are done, we should be able to answer the following questions. What qualifies a unit to be identified as a cell? Framework appreciation of eukaryotic cells, prokaryotic cells, unicellular cells, multicellular cells, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and viruses, and stuff like that. So maybe I'm going to ask, can someone try and define what a cell is in simple terms? What do you understand by the word cell in simple terms? A cell is a living organism. Should we say that? If we really defined a cell, if we say a cell is a living organism, if we really defined it, what is a cell? Okay, fine. May someone call out the items that are listed there, We've got a eukaryotic fungi. What else do we have? We have a virus. Oh, just think of stuff that causes diseases, and you meant what? Protozoa. What else? Bacteria. Okay. What can we say? Okay, we can classify a cell as something that is living. That's okay. Let's move on. Is a fungi a living thing? Do we agree? Is a fungi a living thing?
I think so.
Yes. It's animate. Is a virus a living thing?
Yes.
Huh? Are we sure? Is a virus a living thing?
It's not a thing, it's a thing.
Can we qualify it under a cell? Can we call it a cell? Because we sort of defined a cell as a living thing, but we're getting to somewhere. We sort of identified a cell as something that is living. Can you call a virus something that is living?
Yes, it's
living. Did you say so?
I think so.
Okay, we'll find out.
No.
Is a protozoa a living thing?
What is a protozoa?
Okay, fine. Let's move on. We'll get to that. Is a bacteria a living thing?
Yes.
Now we want to find out why we are saying, like, for some reason, I'll put a question mark, because we need to identify whether a virus is a living thing or not. So what I will do is I'm going to put a question mark. So, what we call a cell, this is how I'm going to define a cell. A cell is the basic unit for living organisms. Did we get that? A cell is the basic unit for living organisms. A cell is a basic unit for living organisms. You can call it a cell is a framework for living organisms. That is how you define a cell. So that is how we define a cell. May someone help me with my baby? Are we okay?
No.
Are we okay?
There you go. So it's a basic unit of the living organism.
So a cell, basic unit for living organisms. So in other words, there are keywords that we are looking into. We have defined a cell as being a basic unit. We shall get to discover what we mean by basic unit. Then the next keyword that we have is living. In other words, we are saying it's animate. something is said to be living if it's involved in the processes of life. The processes of life. So this is how you start. You call it living because it's involved in processes of life. And what can you think of if I mention the word organism? What do you think of the moment I've mentioned the word organism? What is an organism? When you look at me, I'm an organism. What makes up an organism?
Your different parts and cells and...
What are they called? What are they called? Because the other point is levels of organization for organisms. So that's what we need to understand. I'm an organism. What am I made of biologically?
You're made of
Different
organs.
parts. Organs is not the end product.
No.
What is different organs? What do they make?
An organism.
They define what is known as a system. Okay, fine. So now we want to understand what a cell is according to that definition. A cell is got, to qualify any unit that we are given. Like now we want to study whether a virus is a cell, whether a fungi is a cell, whether a protozoa is a cell, whether a bacteria is a cell. There are parameters that we are supposed to look into. And what are those parameters that qualifies a unit to be a cell? It is supposed to have a membrane. It is supposed to have cytoplasm. Very key. It is supposed to have a nucleus. Okay. Now we need to understand, why is it supposed to have a membrane?
The membrane defines it, doesn't it? Because if it's not, if it doesn't have a membrane, then there's nothing. No? I don't know.
Yeah, I love the membrane. It defines what gets in or what gets outside. Because on your membrane, that's where you find what you call them porins. You can call them voltage gates. You can call them proton pumps, the protein pumps and stuff like that for various metabolic processes that we need of. And why is a nucleus important? Very important. Why is a nucleus key? Because those are the things that you're supposed to think
Because it's
of.
the heart of the cell.
Why is a nucleus important?
Because that's where everything happens.
Okay. So, where is my item? So, let's try and here we go. There we go. So let's identify this. We call it our. We're not getting into the details today. We simply list them in brain. And then, how do you describe cytoplasm? How do you define cytoplasm? What is it?
It's the stuff that's in the cell.
What is cytoplasm? What is cytoplasm?
All I can tell you, the cytoplasm is inside the cell.
Yes. Can you try and describe it? How do you describe it?
Oh, nucleus. What did you say about
The what?
nucleus?
We haven't got into it. Were you dreaming? What can you say of the cytoplasm?
Cytoplasm is the space that all the other...
I love what you're talking about. We can't call it space because it's not vacuum. So what is it?
Is it the liquid then?
Exactly.
It's liquid.
This is a jelly-like substance containing
those things.
All the organelles.
Nails.
Right. Okay, fine. For now, let's move on. And then the nucleus. Why is nucleus very key? Why is it important as well?
It's important because that's where most of the DNA is found.
Actually, your DNA is
No RNA.
Your DNA is found within your what? Within your nucleus. What else is very key that is made? An organ which is made in your nucleus, which you find in your cytoplasm. What is
Protein.
it? Okay, we'll get to it. I said organ. We can't call protein.
Organ.
Yes.
That's made in the nucleus.
Yes, what is it? Which is very key as far as a replication or cell division is concerned. What is it?
RNA.
Your DNA, like during transcription, it is then translated into RNA, but there's something that is important as far as coding for proteins is concerned. We're talking of ribosomes. They are made in the what? In the nucleus. So are we together? Some faces are there.
We are together.
We are together.
Yes.
Is it making sense?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So your cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance containing all the organisms. And why is the cytoplasm very important? The cytoplasm is very important because all the metabolic processes, they take place in the cytoplasm. Because remember, for metabolism to take place, we need an aqueous environment. This your jelly-like gives you the what? The aqueous environment that you need to. So now what we need to identify briefly are the metabolic processes. Can you think of the metabolic processes that take place in our cytoplasm?
Aerobic processes.
Okay.
Sorry.
We are talking of glycolysis. What are the processes? I spoke about it actually. Those things. Transcription, translation. What is that? Which is very important. Look at your body, please don't sleep. Like when you look at your body, what is it made of? Apart from the water, the other percentage of your body, what is important? What makes your skin? What makes your organs? Just protein, right? It's protein, it's meat. So protein synthesis. So when, I hope I got there. So as far as protein synthesis is concerned, we are talking of mitosis and meiosis, something like that. There are many, but for now, we can just deal with those. So now that we have defined, okay, the other thing that I need to touch on, why DNA is important. We say that the basic unit for living is a cell. So in other words, this is what we start off with. We start off with, as far as life is concerned, we start off with an egg, right? And then it's united with a sperm. This is fertilization. And then you go through the stage of meiosis, and then you end up with fertilization, right? And then you end up with, what is it called? Just one thing, just one cell, known as a zygote. Exactly. So now we have a zygote. But can we try to imagine how on earth from a zygote we have a good-looking person? From a zygote, because life is starting from this cell called a zygote. What happens?
Mitosis translation.
The mitosis, what is that?
DNA replication.
Sorry?
DNA replication.
Okay, DNA, exactly.
So good.
Because mitosis actually, what is mitosis in simple terms? Mitosis in simple terms is DNA replication. Did you know that? That is mitosis. So I'm just going to try it from, so this is what we have. We have got your DNA which is in the nucleus, right? Your DNA which is found in the nucleus. And during, in mitosis, they are, okay fine, I'll pose a question. What is the function of DNA? What is the function of DNA? In simple terms, like when you're asked the question, what is the function of DNA? What do you say? Without involving any other technical jargon, just a simple definition. One mark.
Makeup of a person, of a human being.
Okay, the function of DNA, it codes for proteins, right? So the function of DNA, the function of DNA is to code for proteins. So we are saying we're supposed to make proteins. If you remember my questions, those questions that Mutura was giving us, he was asking the questions, why is that proteins a big deal? This is all about life processes, making different cells. So what we have from a zygote, we have our zygote. Then we go through a process which is known as differentiation. And at the end result, what we have is known as specialization. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritties of these things, but I just want for us to take note of, from a zygote, the cell goes through what is known as differentiation. So in other words, you say you end up with a lung cell, you end up having a sperm, you end up having all those different kinds of cells. There's a certain differentiation that is supposed to take place until we have a cell that you can call an ovule, a cell that you can call the cell S cells in your lungs or something like that, those different kinds of cells that you can think of. So during DNA, during coding for...
Wait, I'm lost for the question. So you said we get a zygote, which is one cell basically.
Yes, yes.
So what is differentiation? So my cells are the one there or what?
Exactly. Differentiation is like differentiating.
It's now creating other.
So when we have those different specific cells, it's called specialization.
Well, then you have
exactly. So that is how the what was I talking about? That yeah, that is all about mitosis. This is all about mitosis because mitosis basically is cell division. So now what we have, our control center for everything is our DNA. And maybe during the next lecture we're going to look into details about the DNA, everything about it in detail. Like we're going to look
Are we going to dwell on physiology or we are also looking at anatomy and so forth?
Yes, we covered everything that we need to know. So here we go. Let's switch it up. Okay. So here we go. So from your DNA, you've got an intermediate molecule. What is it called? Am I still inside the frame? Yeah. From your DNA, what do you have? Intermediate molecule, guys. From DNA, what do you find? Okay. So during the stage, mitosis, let's say mitosis has got these stages. We are coding for proteins. We have an intermediate molecule which is known as mRNA. And this is what we call, yes, messenger RNA, and this is what is known as transcription. So in other words, what we are doing is we are copying information from the DNA, but we need a messenger to relay instructions to your ribosomes. This is instructions to the ribosomes, because what is the function of ribosomes? What is the function of ribosomes?
Synthesis.
Eh?
To synthesize.
What?
Protein.
Exactly. Protein synthesis. So in other words, the instructions, the sequences that we have to make your proteins, they are carried by your messenger RNA, which is an intermediate molecule, and then it is carried to the ribosomes. So then in the ribosomes, this is where coding for translation. This is not translation. Where the RNA is, where the instructions contained within your mRNA are then changed into proteins through some enzymatic processes that take place on your ribosome. So in a nutshell, that is all about DNA. Was that clear? Yes. Have we understood something at least to see the relationship, what is happening, where we define a cell? Like
but we haven't answered that question mark on.
Yes, we are going there. We are going there. For now, I was defining how we end up with proteins, because our DNA is supposed to code for proteins, but as we have seen, your ribosome, you find it in the nucleus. That is why for a cell to qualify, for a unit to qualify as a cell, is supposed to have cytoplasm, because your cytoplasm is what holds the stuff that you need. Because once you are done, what do you call it, the translation, you have your proteins, they are supposed to be expressed on the membrane for whatever reasons, and maybe this membrane disintegrates and a new cell is formed, just depending on the metabolic process that is taking place. But now you realize that we need vesicles to carry your proteins to the exactly, and through the what, which are made by the, what are they called? Golgi apparatus, stuff like that. So now we understand in simple terms why we need the cytoplasm for something to be classified as animate, as living. Okay. Okay.
So then life begins in the cell.
Sorry?
So we can safely say life begins in the cell.
Exactly. That's why we call it a basic unit for life, the building block for life, because we're starting with this cell known as a what? The zygote. That then differentiates and specializes into different cells, different organisms, defining a system. We are together, right? Okay. So now we want to answer the question to proceed with objective number 1. Once we know what a cell is, like now we know a cell has a membrane, a cell is supposed to have a cytoplasm, and a cell is supposed to have a nucleus. We know that. The next thing that we now need to know now is a framework to appreciation of eukaryotic cells. Your eukaryotic cells, prokaryotic cells, unicellular cells, multicellular cells, bacteria, your fungi, your protozoa, viruses, and all that stuff. So that is now what we need to do. So, may I? Okay, sure.
I'm not very good.
Okay, that's okay. I can deal with this portion. And if the other part is not. Okay, so here we go. Eukaryotic. How do you define a eukaryotic cell? How do you define it? Eukaryotic cell. What is a eukaryotic cell? You are allowed to consult your Google. You are allowed to consult.
Well, I know that we humans will go to eukaryotic cells.
Yeah, what do we mean when we say we are eukaryotic cell? Exactly what do we mean?
It means that a eukaryotic cell is a cell that you have a membrane, a nucleus, and cytoplasm.
Okay, yes, that is. But now there are different kinds of those cells. Yes, there are prokaryotic cells, there are eukaryotic cells, because now we want to sort of differentiate a human being from other living organisms, because there are quite a number of species, of living organisms. But now we need to rightly identify what it is. So what is a eukaryotic cell? Guys. What is a eukaryotic cell? The answers are there, though, but it's okay. You can go on and consult. What is a eukaryotic cell, so that we get to remember. We work together. I should be the one working. Eukaryotic cell. What happened to your phone? Eukaryotic cell. Because you realize that these things are very key. You get to do pathology, pharmacology, and all those subjects that you are still doing. If you don't understand these things, you'll be having you'll encounter serious problems. But once you have your foundation well defined, you won't have problems, because it's just a repetition of the same things. The subjects are just so interconnected. You can't find from Google.
Google tells you.
What does it say? Eukaryotic cell.
Okay, it says
Definition.
any cell or organism that possesses a clearly defined nucleus.
Yes.
The eukaryotic cell is a nuclear membrane that surrounds the nucleus, in which the well-defined chromosomes are located.
Okay, that's okay. Can you go search in a eukaryotic cell? Say it's a eukaryotic cell, multicellular or unicellular. Can ask something like that. What did it say?
Unicellular organisms fall into general categories.
Okay, fine. There we go. Eukaryotic cell and prokaryotic cell.
So these are unicellular.
Okay, what definition did you find?
All prokaryotes are unicellular and
Exactly.
are classified into bacteria and archaea.
Exactly. This is what I was looking for.
Oh.
Unicellular. And there you got.
And then that one, many eukaryotes are multicellular.
Yeah, many, but this is what I was looking for. Remember, according to. Oh, yeah, that's the relationship that I was looking for, that I wanted for us to identify. Multicellular, but you realize that there's a certain organism which is not which is unicellular, but which is classified.
Many eukaryotes are multicellular, but many are unicellular.
Yes, there are some that are also, they can also be what? Unicellular. Okay, fine. Having said that, let's move on to, let's start off with the bacteria.
Wait, so you're saying eukaryotic cells can be multicellular